Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Accidental Beauty. If you're new, welcome. My name is Laura. I post videos about once a week, mainly about makeup and sometimes about hair, fashion, lifestyle, beauty, skincare, all that good stuff. Today I'm going to be doing an unfiltered makeup chit chat. I haven't done one of these in a really long time, and there's just been a lot of news going on in the makeup world. So if you want to hear my thoughts and just reactions to mostly product releases and some makeup world news, then please keep on watching. So just a heads up, I've got my laptop just off screen in the corner over here, so I've got all my notes here, so I'm just gonna kind of be referencing back and forth. I've also got some screenshots on my phone, which I'll be putting up on the screen on either side. I'm not really sure where I'm gonna put them when I edit, but just giving you a heads up if I'm going to be kind of like looking all over the screen, that's why. I've wanted to do this video for quite some time now, and I've just been collecting notes for the past month, so the month of June. I did my Pride 2020 series. If you missed that, I'm going to link it over here so you can go back and watch it. But yeah, I just wanted to dedicate the whole month of June, pretty much, minus one video. So just a disclaimer, I'm a little bit behind the times on some of these announcements, so just forgive me for that. I wanted to make this video earlier, but I also didn't want to take away from my Pride series, so just a heads up. First item on my list is ABH canceled? I'm not going to go into too much detail, but for those of you who missed the explosion in the makeup world, Anastasia Beverly Hills is not doing too great as a brand, but basically a creator, oh my god, okay, I can't remember her name, but anyways, this isn't the first time that ABH has come under fire for doing kind of shady things. Okay, long story short, they were supposed to collaborate with an influencer. They basically worked out an agreement. She gave them her rate and they agreed to pay that. And then they basically tried to manipulate her and try and get more work out of her for less money. They were trying to rip her off. They were trying to take advantage of a smaller influencer. I'll link to the videos that explain it a lot better and in a lot more detail and have receipts. They'll all be in the description box below. If you're interested in learning more, you can watch those videos. They explain it much better than I did. It all comes back to not paying an influencer, not paying a creator, an artist, what she deserves. Like, she asked for a specific rate, the brand agreed to pay that rate and then never ended up paying her that rate. So what is wrong with you? And they're such a big brand that they can afford to do this, so I don't really understand, aside from the fact that obviously at the end of the day they want to make money, I don't understand why you'd agree to do something and then just not do that. Why? And as someone who has done freelance work in the past, for those of you who don't know, I'm a graphic designer. I absolutely despise this attitude from brands, from individuals, anyone who's collaborating with a freelance person, or even just treating your employees like it's just a really shitty thing to do. This is the reason why I actually won't do any freelance work anymore, because I've been ripped off. There was one instance where, this is actually the last freelance job that I did. I hate talking about this. It was actually a guy that I went to school with, which makes it even more shady, because it's come on, I've known you forever, why are you like this? We negotiated a price and we negotiated deliverables, and I gave him concepts and he seemed to like them, and then all of a sudden just ghosted me, and I had him pay 25% upfront of our negotiated price, but still the 75% he refused to pay me because he just didn't like my concepts and went somewhere else. And it's first of all, you didn't say anything to me. I could have made revisions, and if you didn't like my concepts, we could have started from the beginning. It's not that difficult just to tell me that you didn't like my concepts. If I didn't understand what you were looking for, then just tell me and I'll fix it. He refused to pay me the 75% that he owed me, and he still hasn't paid me, and I just won't do freelance again. So it's just, I get what it's like to be treated like that and to not be paid what you're owed, and it's disgusting. It's honestly despicable behavior, especially from such a big respected brand, and it made me lose respect in this brand. This ABH used to be probably my favorite makeup brand, and now I don't want to buy from them anymore because of treatment like that. It's just, how can you do that to someone? How can you think that your actions won't be leaked to the public when you're such a big brand with such a big influence and work with such big influencers? Like, you can't get away with that. And I really hope that brands and public figures will be held accountable for like shitty behavior like that, because it's enough. Like, stop. One more thing that I forgot to mention is that in this case with this influencer, this is like one of my pet peeves, and I don't want to sound dismissive of other people's beliefs. One of the reasons that ABH or Norvina, whoever was answering the emails, one of the reasons that they gave for taking so long and stalling with this business deal was that Mercury was in retrograde, and they don't like making business deals while Mercury is in retrograde. I feel like maybe just say up front, if you're negotiating with this creator and it's getting closer to like Mercury being in retrograde, you don't want any bad luck to happen with the deal, then maybe just say like it's a like significant religious time period right now, and I'd rather not do business deals at this time, and can we wait until next month or whatever to negotiate, instead of like having all these excuses. Like, I think the fact that there were all these excuses and this business deal kept being pushed off and pushed off and pushed off, that kind of makes me and probably other people think Mercury in retrograde thing was just a bullshit excuse and not like a valid sort of religious spiritual time. If that is like an actual religious significant time period, then I don't know, maybe plan your time better. Or you don't even have to bring religion into it. You could just say, hey, we've got a lot happening and we need to push off this negotiation until next month, and we'll meet with you then. Plain and simple. And then actually follow through. I don't know. I love the brand, but I hate the management. And I feel like pretty much since Subculture came out and that whole debacle, like, I've slowly lost respect for the brand. And this is like just kind of like the icing on top. And I don't know, it's like I really want to buy from the brand, but like, if you're gonna keep doing things like that, like, there's so many good quality brands out there. I love their eyeshadow formula so much, but there's so many other really good brands that like I don't need them. I mean, obviously, like, who am I? I'm a nobody with like 300 subscribers, but still, it's just, I'm not the only one who thinks like this, and I'm not the only one who's lost respect in the brand. And with more and more shady dealings from not just them, from various brands, I don't know, people have had enough. I think the general public realizes the value of creators and creators' time, and people shouldn't be doing work for free, and brands who aren't recognizing that, honestly, like, they can go fuck themselves. But like, brands who aren't realizing that, like, they're gonna learn the hard way sooner or later, because people aren't gonna want to work with them anymore. Like, it's just as simple as that. Okay, that was a really long-winded point number one. All right, next point. Like, I don't even want to talk about this. All right, so my next point is the Stupid Love palette by Lady Gaga, and Haus Labs is her makeup company. Okay, so let's start off. I'm a pretty big Lady Gaga fan. She can sing, she can dance, she can act. She's a triple threat, but can she make makeup? She's released a few products now. I think she's released 2 eyeshadow palettes. Can't remember if she's released glitter, but she's got liquid eyeshadow. She has some eyeliner, lipsticks. She's known for like bold, crazy hair colors, hairstyles, very out there fashion, lots of bold colors in her makeup, lots of graphic liner, lots of glitter. She's an icon. She's all about like standing out, expressing yourself, like being you. I really resonate with that, and a lot of other people really resonate with that. And her makeup brand doesn't quite match her aesthetic, I guess. And what I mean by that is a lot of her, not everything, like, there are some products that look really interesting, like actually I think it's her liquid eyeshadows that look really cool. They've got like really like smoky, bold, glittery colors. So those seem really cool, but like her lipsticks seem kind of basic, kind of lackluster. Her eyeshadow palettes aren't the most, like, when you think Lady Gaga, you think like lots of like silver, bright blue, neon, bright pink, just very out there, very pigmented colors. And her first palette was like a very basic neutral eyeshadow palette, and people are like, the fuck is this? Like, it was pretty, it looked nice, but it didn't scream Lady Gaga. There were no crazy colors. It wasn't like it wasn't her. And then this new palette, the Stupid Love palette, which is inspired obviously by, the song Stupid Love and her new album Chromatica. And I believe, if not all, most of the shades are named after shades on her album Chromatica. And like the colors are nice. Like I like the orange and blue color scheme. You kind of got your like warm neutrals, you have your bold, cooler tones, and it looks nice. The pigmentation looks okay, but when you think Lady Gaga, you think super pigmented, super like you expect higher quality, and the reviews that I've seen aren't quite that. I wasn't super excited about the color scheme. Like it just, I would have expected like a rainbow palette, or like, I don't know what I was expecting. I guess like no neutrals. Like I was expecting just all colors, and there were a lot of neutrals, and I don't really get why, because she's not really a neutral person. Aside from maybe her album Joanne, where the aesthetic was more minimalist, but that was kind of more of like a concept album in a way, so I feel like it's not like the glitter and the bold neon colors that she normally does for like other non-concept albums and just her performances. The color story just doesn't scream Gaga, and although I like the cohesiveness and consistency of, naming all or most of the shades in the palette after her album and like sort of releasing them at the same time so they kind of go together. Like I love that sort of complete story, if you will. I haven't actually listened to the full album, so I don't know like color-wise if the colors like match the album, but it would have been cool if the palette was called Chromatica to go with the Chromatica album, and like if each color was sort of, if it's somehow connected to each song, because so far the music videos that she's put out, they have a very distinct color story. So it would have been cool if the palette matched those color stories. But yeah, I'm kind of disappointed by her brand, and I don't know, she's not the only celebrity to put out a makeup line or makeup products, and I'll get to that later in this video, but it's just, I had such high hopes, and this is very disappointing. Like I really wanted to buy the palette to support her, and then just seeing the reviews that were so negative, it kind of ruins the whole brand for me, and I'll talk more about that later. Moving on. Okay. I didn't want to make this video because I feel like I'd be such a downer, because I feel like everything in here I hate. So yeah, just a heads up, this is not a super positive video. All right, so the next thing that I have to talk about is the Morphe collaboration with Coca-Cola. Yes, you heard me right. Coca-Cola, like the drink. Why? Like, fucking why? Why? Morphe does, like, I swear, a million collaborations a year, and some of them I understand, and some of them I just really don't. And this is one of those collaborations that I just really don't get. I feel like other makeup brands have done weird collaborations with like other brands that have nothing to do with makeup, but this is just such a weird collection. Also, like, what the fuck is with these colors in this eyeshadow palette? Like, where do you get sort of a silvery blue from Coca-Cola? Like, explain to me the connection. Aside from the fact, I understand that blue is a complementary color to red, and obviously you have Coca-Cola red, and that's so iconic, but like, I don't understand the point. I don't understand. Nobody asked for this. Nobody is gonna buy this except for like maybe collectors, but like, it's honestly, I'm gonna see so many people trying to get rid of these in like buy and sell groups in probably about a month or two when Morphe does their next collaboration, because it's just stupid and no one asked for this and no one wants it and no one's gonna use it, aside from people who get it in PR and then they're immediately gonna get rid of it. Or it's just gonna sit in their drawer and not be touched. I mean, like, look, the colors are really nice, but it's just like, it's so unnecessary. Also, if you're gonna do a Coca-Cola eyeshadow palette, honestly, like, make it like red, white, maybe black for Coke Zero and like silver for Diet Coke or something, and make it like all varying shades of those. Because like it's such a stupid looking palette. Like the first row is pretty much all neutrals except for like that one sort of icy bluish shade that looks really nice. The second row, you've got three reds. You've got a gold for some reason. You've got a blue for some reason, and a silver that, okay, fine, I get that. And then you got like a couple more on the last row. You have a couple more like sort of gray, silvery type colors, and then more browns. Like, why? Like, honestly, if someone saw this palette and they didn't know what brands it was associated with, I guarantee people would be like, what is this palette? Like, it looks stupid, honestly. Whereas if you made it like more cohesive and don't include fucking brown shades, because we have a million brown shades in all of our palettes because every single palette has a brown shade in it and we don't need any more. If you just made it like a red and silver palette, I think that would be really cool, kind of different, something you haven't really seen before, and Morphe could actually do something original for once. Imagine that. Like the brushes look nice, like they look like standard Morphe brushes, just with Coca-Cola stamped on them, and obviously they're Coca-Cola red. That looks nice, like they stand out in your collection, whatever. And I guarantee you the same thing, like people are gonna use them because they look aesthetically nice. Maybe for like, let's give it 8 months, and then no one's gonna want them anymore, because why would you have a Coca-Cola eyeshadow brush? It's so gimmicky and people are gonna get tired of it in less than a year. So I see that they have some lip glosses or lipsticks, and they have some setting powders, and I think that is it. It would be really, really cool actually if the lip products, or maybe not the eyeshadows, but maybe the setting powders, but probably just stick to the lips. It would be really cool if they were Coke scented. It's like a little obnoxious, but I feel like it would kind of work. Like it would kind of be some sort of identifiable marker that would make it like, this is a Coke collection, aside from the obvious branding. I don't know who this collection is supposed to appeal to. It seems like something that I might have bought, even though I wasn't interested in makeup at the time, but like it seems like something that I would have been into when I was like 13, because I remember I had some lip glosses, like those lip smackers that were Coke scented, or they weren't really flavored. I guess they were scented, like Coke. And there were like a whole bunch, like they had root beer, they had Coke, they had like a bunch of other things. And I think they were actually branded like Coca-Cola and so forth. This reminds me of something that I would have had potentially as a 13-year-old. So like, I don't really know who the target audience is for this product, because Morphe in general seems like a brand that kind of appeals to like people maybe in their early 20s or late teens. Like they're a relatively affordable brand, although they have their controversies, and that's another video, but it just seems like a brand for people who are starting to get into makeup but who are old enough to have the skills, and not like, you know, 13-year-olds can't have the skills, but in general, like people who are old enough and have like a little bit of disposable income. The CoverGirl is kind of what you start out with as like a, let's say like an early teenager, or in my case, like a late teenager. And then you kind of work your way up, and Morphe feels like kind of something for like the 16 to 20 something crowd. But this seems like even younger. Like it seems like something that people younger than that demographic would be into. I don't know, and I don't get it. Okay, moving on. The Colourpop and Sailor Moon restock. So this actually launched like probably earlier this year, I think, and it's like always sold out, and it restocked, and actually now while I'm filming this, I'm pretty sure it's sold out again. Colourpop does a really good job with their packaging and appealing to millennials' nostalgia. So they've done a lot of collections, like they've done a bunch of Disney collections, now they have the Sailor Moon collection, they had a Hello Kitty collection. They've done a lot of things that a lot of millennials, such as myself, grew up with and are just gonna buy because of that nostalgia, that character recognition, and the products themselves look really, really nice as well. A thing that bothers me particularly about the eyeshadow palette is, like, okay, I love the idea. Like, I was a huge Sailor Moon fan back in the day, and I love the idea of taking such iconic and recognizable and like influential characters in people's eyes, and showing that love for that franchise or that character in makeup. I don't particularly love the execution of the Sailor Moon collection. Like, the blushes look nice. I feel like stamping Luna's face, or I can't remember what her name is in Japanese, but whatever, I'm gonna use English names because I watched it in English, sue me. Stamping Luna's face in the blushes, it just seems kind of like basic, but I get it, okay, fine. The lip colors are just very basic, and I mean, like, Sailor Moon didn't really wear like bold colored lipstick, but I don't know, the colors don't like particularly scream Sailor Moon in the like color palette of the show. I don't really understand why they need glitter. I don't know, maybe the pink glitter makes sense. The purpley glitter seems a little bit of an odd choice. And then let's talk about the eyeshadow palette itself. Like, forgive me, but it looks like a really just basic Colourpop palette. Like, it doesn't look special. Like, it's beautiful on its own, and if it was just like its own Colourpop palette, it'd be fine. You know, it's just a basic, pretty neutral palette. And like, the packaging is really nice. I just don't really feel like the colors fit with the color palette of the show. I can't think specifically of what I would have changed, but maybe like had some more colors and elements from like her school uniform or her sailor uniform. Maybe pull the pink from her boots, the yellow, well, they already have the yellow from her hair, more blues because she wears, like, you know, her eyes are blue, her outfit is blue and white with red, maybe add a red in there. I get that they're kind of going for more of the dreamy pastel aesthetic that you kind of have in more of her off-duty interactions, like the colors that she typically wears, or even the, I don't know what to call it, but like the transformation sequence, like that pastel pink background. I feel like that's kind of more what they were going for, but the colors themselves like don't particularly scream Sailor Moon, and I just kind of take issue with that, especially because it's a franchise that means so much to me. So I wasn't interested in buying it when it launched or when it relaunched. I mean, I considered it for a second. I considered maybe buying like one of the blushes, and then I was like, you know what? Like, I don't need this. I'm feeding into exactly what Colourpop wants. And I think I'm kind of becoming, in a way, like an anti-consumer, even though I am buying a lot more than I used to. But it's just like, I don't need it just because it has Sailor Moon stamped on it. Like, I was kind of thinking when I was buying some things on Colourpop's site, would I buy this if it wasn't Sailor Moon? And the answer was no, so I didn't buy it. Colourpop does a really good job at making you want things that you don't need, especially because they are so affordable. And they're particularly effective by doing all these collaborations with iconic characters. And it's just a bunch of crap that we don't need. And I heard the collection was kind of like the eyeshadow palette was kind of so I'm glad I didn't buy it. Oh yeah, one more thing. The palette art was like, it was a lot of greens, pinks, like deep yellows. The art on the palette just seems so saturated, and then the colors in the palette just seem so muted and pastel, and there seems to be a disconnect. So either the colors should kind of match the palette art, or the palette art should match the pastelness of the shades, and it seems like they don't really match. And yeah, it's just another product that people will buy because of the fandom and the recognition, rather than, you know, actually looking at the colors themselves and saying, like, do I actually need another sort of like pastel-ish neutral palette? Like, no, I don't think you do. But that's just me. Let's talk about another Colourpop collection, and that is their tie-dye collection for, I guess it's like summer 2020. So I actually really like this collection. I was this close to buying it, and then I was like, do I really need this? Like, I have a decent amount of pastel shades in my collection. I don't think I really need more, and I like kind of regret not buying the collection or like one of the palettes, but I really don't need it. Right now I'm trying to focus more on like individual shades that I want rather than looking at palettes as a whole. If it's on sale, I might pick it up because the palettes are so pretty. So let's talk about the collection itself. It is, as I mentioned, it's tie-dye themed, and that is so on point. I don't know about you guys, but where I am, I've noticed a lot of people, I mean, now people are starting to come out of quarantine, but while people were completely in quarantine, tie-dye just seemed like the activity that everyone was doing. Like, I know one or two people who are actually like selling tie-dye shirts. And I never thought that would make a comeback like in kind of mainstream fashion. I just thought that was a thing that you do at camp. But anyways, apparently it's an activity that people still enjoy. Colourpop is really good at a lot of things, as I mentioned, but they're really good at identifying and starting or being at the same time as trends. Like they're very trendy. The color schemes that they come out with, just everything they do is just very on trend. So this was a perfect example of just like how on trend and timely they are. I don't know how fast it takes them to create their palettes. Like this must have been in development for several months. So I don't know how they did it like so quickly. But yeah, it was a very timely collection. Pastels are bright, they're perfect for summer, they look gorgeous, they look decently pigmented. I haven't seen too many reviews actually on this collection, but I haven't seen how the colors look on darker skin tones, so I'd be curious to see that. But in general, I love the collection. The palettes are all stunning. Just the whole collection is just beautiful and just very aesthetically pleasing to look at. And I'm not fully convinced yet not to pick up one of these palettes because they're just absolutely stunning. All right, moving on. The e.l.f. Retro Paradise. So it's an eyeshadow palette, and then they've also got, looks like some lip glosses, some sort of facial oil, some highlighters, brush. Those look like liquid eyeshadows, and maybe liquid highlights. I'm not sure. The highlighters look nice. The lip glosses look nice. Like everything looks fine, whatever. I think they're liquid eyeshadows. Those actually I really like. But I'm here to talk about the palette. Now, retro can mean a lot of things. It can refer to a lot of time periods. And when you call something Retro Paradise, I don't really know what time period you're referring to. The font looks very, I want to say kind of 70s, 80s-ish. So let's assume that that's the general time period that we're looking at. Okay, my issue with this is just pick one time period and stick with it. You could even do a Retro Paradise collection and do several eyeshadow palettes, and you have like the 70s palette, the 80s palette, the 20s palette. Like that would honestly be a really cool collection that I would totally be down for. And this is just like what is this mess of a palette? First of all, you have like 4 pastel shades, or 5 if you count the white. But like, okay, you have like 4 pastel shades, and then the rest are kind of like muted browns. Kind of sounds like Morphe. Take away the pastels and you're left with a really boring neutral palette. And it's like that pop of color thing that a lot of brands and a lot of palettes suffer from. Honestly, if e.l.f. wanted to do like an all pastel palette, I'd be totally here for that. And I think that would be really cool if they wanted to do like sort of a bronzy, smoky, I feel like 70s, like late 70s. That would be really appropriate. Lots of glitter, like kind of like a Cher inspired palette. I think that would be really cool. But just like, a lot of people are really excited about this palette, and I'm really angry about it because I think it's so all over the place. It's not cohesive. It's just like pick one era of like retro and do that really well instead of just like trying to throw in a bunch of shades that like can really apply to any decade. It's just a mess and I don't like it. I'm really angry. Like it doesn't look good. I really don't think this is a nice looking palette. Like the packaging is nice. The overall theme is really cool. The rest of the products look really nice. It's just the eyeshadow palette is just like, I think it's really stupid. Like honestly, even if they did like small, let's say like 6 or 9 pan palettes or something, or even like quads, if they wanted to be like super cheap, inspired by each decade, or even like if you did like a couple bigger palettes and you kind of did like 60s, 70s, and then like 80s, 90s, or like something like that. Like pair a few decades together. You could divide it into sections and then like kind of pull primary colors from each decade. And what I mean by that is just like kind of the popular colors from the time. So like 60s, I would kind of think more pastels. 70s, I would kind of think more like earth tones. 80s, you'd have more neon. So in 90s, you'd have like just boring basic browns, like, and so on and so forth. I think that would work a lot better and would just be more cohesive. Maybe I'm just taking this personally because I am a big retro, like vintage lover, and I just love being inspired by different decades, and it's just not that. Okay, we're back to Morphe again. Morphe's collaboration with Maddie Ziegler. So I actually used to watch when Maddie got her start on Dance Moms. I watched several seasons of that show, and then her career just blew up. And like, honestly, like, I'm definitely jealous of this, like, how old is she, like 16-year-old girl or whatever, because like, honestly, her career is insane, and I can tell that she's worked hard, and her mom has worked hard to get her the opportunities that she's had, and honestly, like, good for her. She's set, she's good, and she's incredibly talented. Like, she deserves everything. But since when is she a makeup artist? Similar to what I was saying about Coca-Cola and other collaborations that don't make sense, I hate when brands do collaborations with celebrities that have nothing to do, like, they're not in the makeup world. Yes, they might wear makeup and enjoy wearing makeup, but like, they're not makeup artists, they're not in the beauty community. And I just find it really odd. Like, you're not making YouTube videos like showcasing the newest products or trying out new makeup techniques. You're a dancer, you're occasionally an actress. I don't know if she sings. I think she might sing. I'm not 100% sure. And it's just like, where does makeup artistry fit into all that? Like, yeah, it might be something that you do as a hobby or just for fun on the side, or you do your makeup for your events, but like, we don't see that. You might have this deep connection with makeup, but like, we don't see that as, you know, consumers and your audience. So it doesn't make sense to a lot of consumers. I think Colourpop has done it, Tarte's done it, like a lot of other brands have done it, where they've just collaborated with a celebrity who's not in the makeup world just to stick their name on a product so that it'll sell to their fans. And I don't like it. It's very shady. It's kind of like the Sailor Moon collection, where you know that a bunch of people who were born and grew up in the 90s and who spent their childhoods watching Sailor Moon will buy this collection because of that nostalgia. Like, it's sort of the same thing where you have this connection to your favorite dancer, your favorite artist, or whatever your connection is to Maddie Ziegler, and you'll buy it just because of the name recognition. I don't like it. Like, I mean, who's her fan base? Like, I feel like Morphe is pandering to like 13-year-olds, because honestly, I don't know who her actual fan base is. I assume it's like 13-year-olds. I don't know. It's just like, who is Morphe's demographic? Like, I don't know. Maybe it is 13-year-olds. I don't know. What I was saying before about collaborations, like,
she doesn't even go here.
Like, I'm sick and tired of makeup brands collaborating with celebrities who, as the general public, like, we don't know if you have this connection to makeup. And there are so many talented makeup artists out there who would love to do collaborations with big brands, but brands like Morphe, who, I don't want to make assumptions, but it has been speculated and based on their actions that, okay, I'll just say it, like, they sometimes give off a vibe that they're just money hungry by doing collaborations with people who aren't in the beauty community and who don't seem to have, like, they're not makeup artists, they're not, it's like with Coca-Cola, like, there's so many talented artists out there who would love to do, maybe not with Morphe, but who would love to do collaborations with big brands, and brands who seem to be, at least portray that vibe that they're only about making money. They have no interest in these like nobody makeup artists because people don't know who they are. They don't have a big enough following. So instead, they collaborate with people who will make a lot of money even if the collaboration doesn't make sense. It's so unfortunate because there are so many talented people out there who deserve these collaborations and who would probably come up with the most creative color schemes, and these brands don't let them. And it hurts my soul. I just want artists to be able to like have their chance, especially because the arts are such an underfunded area. We just need more, I don't want to say representation, but we just need newer faces in the industry. Like, I'm sick and tired of seeing collaborations that don't make sense and not seeing these talented people like get the recognition that they deserve, and not to mention like the money that they deserve. Okay, let's talk about the palette itself. Okay, so this color scheme is all over the place, and maybe it is pandering to 13-year-olds or people who are like just getting into makeup. You have a row of pastels that are really cute that I feel like would match if you took those, and if you took the pastels from the e.l.f. Retro Love collection and just made that a palette, like that would make sense. It would be cohesive. So you have these really cute pastels that seem to be featured in the campaign and in the palette art. And then you have a row of deep, like rich colors on the bottom that I actually really like. Looks like they're mostly shimmers. You've got a couple mattes. Those shades really speak to me. And then the top 2 rows are like basically browns. Like they're like Morphe basic browns. Surprise, surprise. Of course, Morphe needs to put like a million brown shades in their palettes because I don't know why. The palette is called something like the Imagination or the Imagination palette or something. And it's supposed to be all dreamy and all the promos are pastels and all the artwork looks really kind of like washed out and faded. And you got 1 row of pastels, you got a bunch of basic browns, and then you have some deep smoky colors. Like, what is this collection? If your promo for this is all pastels and you have like about 4 to 5 pastels in the whole palette, I don't see the connection. You're showing one thing on the artwork and then the palette itself is something different. Like, why?
What?
Oh, and then one more thing. Not to like throw shade on Maddie Ziegler, because like, I mean, honestly, good for her for doing this collaboration and getting this opportunity, but like, it's called the Imagination palette and it doesn't look super imaginative to me. Honestly, it looks like things that Morphe has done before. I don't see what's so imaginative about it. If anyone has any ideas, let me know in the comment section below, but I don't get it. And then it looks like they have some like lip oils and some cream like blushes maybe, or those cream eyeshadows. Like, honestly, this looks like a Colourpop palette, and the collection in general just looks like Colourpop. I don't know, it looks kind of cheap. It looks like makeup for like beginners, and maybe that's the point, but I don't like it. Let's talk about KKW's new collection. So I actually am one of the few people who still likes the Kardashians. Kim's makeup brand doesn't really do anything to me, but anyways, whatever. I used to watch Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I still follow all their social media. They're just a very entertaining family. Like, what is this collection? It's so against everything that I'm into. It's just so boring. And I know that appeals to certain people, but like, didn't she release this collection already? Like, I could have sworn, hold on, this is the Classic II, the same palette. Okay, if you take the Classic palette, this is the Classic II. If you take the Classic palette and like rearrange the shades, like, isn't this kind of the same? How much do these palettes go for? $45, which is probably like $50, almost $60 Canadian. Not for me. I'm not her target demographic. Like, I understand that. It's so boring. If you're the type of person who's into neutrals, you're gonna buy one of her palettes. I don't really see people buying more than one of like literally the same palette. I don't really see it as something that like people will be like, oh, look at the new like KKW palette. It's so different and interesting. Like, it just looks the same. Next is P. Louise. I was actually interested in this brand a while ago because they do such bold, bright, colorful looks. They have like this very flawless, perfect aesthetic that like all their models and their makeup artists kind of have like a certain style, and just all the finished looks look so cool, and anyone who's into bright colors and graphic liner, like, that is them. They put out a bunch of colored eyeshadow bases. They were really famous for, I think they had like a peachy colored one, and then they had the white one, and that might have been it. They might have had a darker one for darker skin tones. I honestly can't remember, but their whole thing was basically like a very light eyeshadow primer so that your eyeshadows would really pop. And then they just came out with a whole bunch of eyeshadow bases. They're in all sorts of colors, and just the whole collection, like, the packaging is spot on. Like, it's so good. I guess these are called like crisp finish or whatever, and I assume that's the eyeshadow bases, but they're made to look like chips or crisps, as they call them in the UK. So they're in like those little like chip bags. I don't know if like the products actually come in this, but like, it looks like to-go coffee cups. This looks like maybe an eyeshadow palette, like that sandwiches come in, like when you go to like Starbucks or some other place that has like sort of takeout to-go pre-made sandwiches. Like, it's so cute. Like, it looks like, you know, you get your coffee, you get a bag of chips, and then you get like a little sandwich. Like, the packaging is like A+, but I don't really see why you need all these eyeshadow bases. Like, it looks really pretty when they're all swatched together. Like, I don't understand why a white eyeshadow base or like a very light eyeshadow base can't get you the results that you need. Like, why you need all these different colored eyeshadow bases. I can't remember who it was, but someone was saying like, if you actually think that you need all of these eyeshadow bases, then maybe your eyeshadow isn't pigmented enough, and maybe that's the problem. Like, if you're using a light base to get those neon colors or pastels to really pop, I don't think you need a neon base or a pastel base in the same color to get that effect necessarily. The brand's come under fire recently. Again, I won't get into too much detail because this video is going to be super long, but the brand owner came under fire because she was at a concert and she was singing along to whichever concert she was at, and the performer, I guess, is black and said the N-word in their song, and so Louise, the person, was singing along and said the N-word while she was on like Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, and people called her out for it, and she was like, oh, you're being too sensitive, I was just singing a song. It's like, you're white, you're not allowed to say that word. Come on, like, why don't you know this already? Like, come on. There have been other issues. Apparently, Louise's artists have allegedly stolen makeup looks from other artists, and just the brand has always sort of given off this very like snooty, elitist vibe. Other brands seem pretty accessible. I've sort of become a makeup enthusiast, and I'm like completely self-taught through YouTube tutorials, and basically my channel is to kind of teach people what I wish I had known. I've never gotten this vibe from any other brands, like even like luxury brands. Like I've never felt like they were so inaccessible as Louise. Like, I don't know what it is. They just feel like the popular girls in school who, like, you say one word to them, like you ask like, hey, can I borrow a pencil? And they look at you like, who are you? That's kind of the vibe I get from the brand. So yeah, not into them. Back to the Kardashian-Jenner family, the Kendall and Kylie collaboration. So this is what the eyeshadow palette looks like. It suffers from that pop of color effect where there are basically like 4 bright shades, and if you take them away, it's a brown palette. So I do like Kylie's products. I don't think I've tried anything new since about, I want to say 2019, when she released a bunch of single eyeshadows. So I have 2 of them. One I think was in a palette, and then the other one I think might have just been released as a single shadow. So the eyeshadow quality is fine. I also own the Vacation palette, which came out several years ago, and I like it. Like, I mean, it's a very neutral palette, so shocking that I like it, but I really don't mind her formula. I really like her lip kits. I feel like I'm the only person alive who actually really likes them. But yeah, I just, for one reason or another, I just haven't really been interested in a lot of her releases, so I just haven't bought anything from her in a while. A thing that bothers me about the palette is, I remember in the promo, Kylie said that she worked with Kendall to choose colors that really reflect Kendall. Kendall really likes wearing green, apparently, like green eyeshadow, and she chose 2 greens to put in the palette. Why not just make it a green palette? Like, I don't think she has a purple palette, she has a blue and orange, I think, palette. Like, I don't think she has a green palette. That would have been really cool actually to do. Or even like a green and brown, like kind of like an olive green tones. Not really a summer collection, but I feel like it would have been more cohesive. Like, yes, this looks like a basic Kylie palette because of all the like shimmers and lots of basic browns, but I don't really get it. This is basically a neutral palette with pops of color, which I know is very on brand for her, but like I wish she would put out something a little more interesting. That being said, the other stuff in the collection, she has like some stick blushes, bronzers, and highlights. Those actually look really, really nice. So I was kind of considering looking into buying those because like they actually look really good. Other than that, no. All right, let's talk about it. The Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet palette. Urban Decay, like, what are you doing? Everyone was over the Naked palettes like probably 5 years ago. Obviously, it's not my thing. I don't like neutral palettes. My mom has the Naked 3, and I've tried it. That one's like the rose goldy kind of one. It's nice. It's not the most pigmented. Like, I mean, I guess it's a neutral palette, so it is softer. Like, it's exactly what my mom likes. We're like completely opposite. Naked 1, 2, and 3, like, I get it. That could have been like its own little series, and then just make other palettes. You could even do the same format, just change the outer packaging, and could be its own thing. Like the Naked Cherry, the Naked Honey, the Naked Ultraviolet. I feel like I'm missing one. Those could have been their own series of palettes. They could have just started a new series of palettes using the same sort of like tall, skinny, rectangular pans and just call it something else. Instead of like Naked, call it, I don't know, the color series. Like, I don't know, use your creativity. Clearly I don't have any right now. Another series that could have been just as popular as the Naked series without calling it the Naked series, because it's clearly not a neutral palette. This is just my opinion, but I think the Naked palette stopped being interesting after Naked 1. Like, honestly, how many neutral palettes do we need? We don't. We don't. Please stop. Please, please, please stop. I don't know if the formula in the Naked Ultraviolet is the same as, like, I've only used the Naked 3, so if it's the same as that and if all of them are the same formula. But if it is, like, you need to update your formula. It's really not great. Like, I feel like pigmentation and makeup quality has come such a long way that, to me, Naked 3 felt closer to a drugstore formula, like a Revlon or a Rimmel. Like, it felt like a cheap quality rather than a high-end brand or like semi-high-end brand quality. Now let's talk about the structure of this palette. So about half the shades are purple. It's like almost half pink, half purple, and there's that one awkward blue shade in the middle. I don't call this ultraviolet at all. Like, to me, ultraviolet is dark bluish purple, like pretty much my favorite shade of purple, which the shade Cyberpunk and even Euphoric, those two shades kind of match like what I think of ultraviolet. The rest are just kind of random purple shades thrown in. No one asked for this. I can't remember who it was. I think it was either Jen Love's Reviews or Smoky Glow. I can't remember. So if I'm misquoting someone, I'm sorry. But one of them said that if this palette was released under a different name, kind of like what I was saying before, if it wasn't called the Naked Ultraviolet, honestly, if it was just called the Ultraviolet palette, maybe if they changed the shape of the palette, like if it wasn't those tall, skinny, rectangular pans, maybe if it was like square pans or circular pans, if it looked different than a Naked palette, I think honestly people would have gone nuts over this palette. They would have talked about how creative and groundbreaking it is. But because it's released under the Naked name and people kind of expect basic and it's really not, for their sake, like, I wish they did something different, because honestly, like, if they just called it the Ultraviolet palette, I think it would have been much more successful. And I feel like a lot of people aren't going to be super into this. So I'm curious. I actually haven't watched any reviews, but I'm curious to see what people think of it, because I honestly rolled my eyes so hard when I saw this promo photo, because it's not a purple palette. Now let's move on talking about purple palettes. Melt Cosmetics is doing a purple palette, and I was so excited when I heard about this because I was expecting like my dream, like cool tone, bluish purples, and we get kind of like a mauvey purple, smoky, warm-ish, but also kind of coolish tone. Like, I guess I kind of call it a plum palette, which does mean that it's a purple palette, but it's like a pinky palette. I wouldn't call that purple, personally. That's just me, my opinion. I wanted 2020 to be the year of purple palettes. Jeffree Star, who I'm gonna put up a separate video about him, put out his purple palette this year. And I just wanted other brands to also put out purple palettes, and maybe one day I would get my perfect purple palette. Honestly, this looks like more of a Naked palette than the Naked palette that I was just talking about. Like, this is more of a neutral palette, which is kind of shocking because I feel like Melt Cosmetics isn't really a neutral brand. I mean, they do some super bright shades, and then they also do some smokier kind of like toned down shades, but I wouldn't call them a neutral brand. And this feels like the closest that they've ever gotten to neutral. It's a really nice palette, like, don't get me wrong, and assuming that it's the same formula as the Gemini palette, like, I'm sure it's just unbelievable quality because I love my Gemini palette. Some of the shades they actually already have in their stacks, so they included them in this palette and added some new shades. So if you enjoyed the stacks or wanted to buy the stacks but just didn't like the clunky format, you can get those shades now. It kind of makes me think that they're going to discontinue the stacks so that they can include the shades in kind of more easy to store formats like their palettes. That's just total speculation. I have no idea. But yeah, just the color story isn't for me. It's kind of lackluster in my opinion. Like, I'm not really a mauve kind of person, but I'm sure the quality is like absolutely out of this world. Next is the Wet n Wild collaboration with My Melody and Kuromi. They look like Sanrio characters. Aha! Okay, so they're Hello Kitty characters, so I was right. They're from the Sanrio franchise. My Melody is Hello Kitty's best friend, and then Kuromi is My Melody's rival. They're really cute characters. That doesn't surprise me that Wet n Wild is doing a collaboration with these characters. I feel like they've probably done a Hello Kitty collection before. Yeah, looks like they did a Hello Kitty collection like a while ago. Wet n Wild is a very, very affordable drugstore brand. I don't really know what their demographic is either, because I feel like on the one hand they sort of target or appeal to younger consumers, kind of the, I don't know, let's say like 12 to 15 range, like kind of people who might be starting to get into makeup. They might be a bit younger, and obviously they're at a much lower price point. So, you know, if you are getting into makeup and you're kind of experimenting, you're buying a bunch of products and you don't really know what you like, you don't really know what colors you like, what formulas, they're kind of that type of brand. But I've never actually used their eyeshadows, but I hear the quality is very, very nice. Definitely better than a Rimmel or like a shitty like L'Oreal palette or something like that. Okay, I've been talking so long that I've actually gone through multiple SD cards and multiple batteries, so I should wrap this up soon. Yeah, so I hear that the eyeshadow quality is really, really nice. The colors look really, really pretty. So the two characters from like just the very basic research that I just did, My Melody is a sweet, sort of similar vibe to Hello Kitty, like very soft pastel, cutesy aesthetic. So her palette, I assume they're both girls, I actually don't know. Her palette is lots of like pinks. You got like one dark purple, but you got like pinks, blush colors, gold, very soft neutral colors. And then Kuromi sort of looks like a foil character, like kind of a polar opposite. So she's got darker tones. She's a bit like spookier. I don't know how else to describe her. So you got like darker purples. You've also got some golds in there and some mauvey kind of tones, but you got like purples, like deep rich purples, a black, a gray. Kind of speaks more to my aesthetic personally. It looks really, really nice actually, and the two palettes seem to complement each other really nicely. Actually, you know what? The purple palette, the Kuromi palette, kind of looks like a dupe for the Norvina palette. The collection also comes with one lipstick, it looks like one lip gloss, looks like a dual-ended eyeshadow brush, and a 4-pan blush palette. I've actually used one of their blushes before, and I actually really, really like their quality. They're super pigmented, they blend out really nicely, they're really, really nice. So yeah, this looks like a really, really nice collection, and just overall, it looks like a very cohesive collection, so good for them. Next is the XX Revolution Baked Bronzer Blush Highlight Trio palette. When I saw this, I immediately thought of the Hourglass Ambient Lighting palette. They have a bunch of like variations on this palette, but it just kind of reminds me of that. And it's not just because it's baked. I think it's like the marbled effect of the blush looks like one of the Hourglass blushes. Anyways, it looks beautiful. It looks really high-end actually. I don't know too much about the brand. Like I know XX Revolution is a sort of subsidiary of Makeup Revolution. It's the same company. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if it's bigger. I don't know if it's better quality. I don't really know. Oh, hold on. There's a bunch of different palettes here. Oh, I didn't realize. I thought it was just one. Looks like there's 4 different palettes. I have my eye on those marbled blushes because they just look stunning. Like if they sold them individually, I'd be very interested. But the Hourglass Ambient Lighting palette, I think that's what it's called. I don't own it and I want it, but I don't need it because it's so expensive, and it just gives you like that really like wet, dewy look on your face, and I don't know, I've seen people use it. It looks beautiful. So I'm curious to try out the Revolution. Well, okay, I'm curious to see reviews on the Revolution one in comparison with the Hourglass one to see if they're comparable at all. I know Makeup Revolution does a lot of dupe products, and I feel like sometimes they're hit and miss. Like I have the Reloaded Division palette. It's a dupe for the ABH Subculture palette, and the quality is kind of hit and miss. Like I really don't like their eyeshadow formula, but I hear their face products are really good. So I have really high hopes for this palette collection, and I'd love to see reviews on it because it looks very tempting. All right, second last, we have the newest palette from Linda Hallberg. It's called the Infinity Glam palette. I feel like I've been hearing about this brand definitely a lot recently, but I feel like they were always kind of in the back of my mind, and I just kind of dismissed them because they sounded like a really sort of like high fashion type of brand, like kind of like a Pat McGrath level, really, really expensive elite type brand. But they're an indie brand that has been getting more and more media attention. So they're releasing this, I guess they have a series of palettes called the Infinity Collection. So this one's the Infinity Glam palette. I think their powders but apparently you can use them on your eyes, eyebrows, cheeks, and body. So it's just kind of like a multi-purpose palette. I don't know how that would work with powders. I don't know. I feel like you'd want to use a cream for like using them on your body especially. Could be wrong. Look, it's a really pretty palette. It looks like just like a basic like multi-purpose palette. You can't really do a lot when it's supposed to be something that you can use kind of all over. You got like your contour bronzer shades, you have your blush shades, you have your highlight shades, and then of course you can use all of them as eyeshadows. So it's a really pretty basic palette. I like it. I have nothing bad to say. Like, it's just a basic palette. I mean, I'm really actually drawn to the blush, like the pink shades. Like, I would definitely use those as blushes. But other than that, it's just a basic palette. The only thing is, how do you keep a palette like this clean if you're using it kind of all over your body? Like, I just always wonder, like, even brands that do those multi-purpose sticks, Bite Beauty has them, Nude Sticks has a couple, NARS. Those ones, they kind of advertise as like you can use it as a cheek product, you can use it on your eyes, on your lips. I like the idea, but how do you keep that sanitary? Especially if you're going from your lips to your eyes. Like, I do that occasionally, but it's kind of gross. And definitely don't recommend without sanitizing. Going back to the Linda Hallberg palette, really, really pretty colors, but I'd love to see these on darker skin tones. I think they did show a model wearing, I think it was this palette, and I know that they have a series, like this isn't the only palette in the series, and I think I could be wrong, but to me, I kind of interpreted it as they're releasing basically the same idea palette for different skin tones. You know, there's one specifically for like darker skin tones that you can use all over your body and it'll actually be pigmented enough to show up. Medium, light skin tones, so on and so forth. I think that's the idea. I could be totally wrong, but I definitely like to see a review and like application on different skin tones. The last one, this is now available. This was teased on Trend Mood probably a few weeks ago, and this is the YSL Clutch eyeshadow palettes. What are you doing? So they're basically eyeshadow palettes that you fold up and then it folds into like what looks like a YSL purse, but it's really just an eyeshadow palette. And for such a luxury, like super high-end brand, it's just so gimmicky. Like, who is your target audience who's going to be buying this? Like, is it people who love luxury but can't afford to buy one of their purses, so they buy this and then you like carry it around? It looks like you're carrying a purse, but it's really not. Like, you can't even put anything in here. It's an eyeshadow palette. The format and just kind of the general appearance of the palette, like, it's very basic. It looks like it would be like a Makeup Revolution or like any kind of drugstore palette. Like, it's not super exciting, but not all high-end palettes look different. Like, Charlotte Tilbury palettes look like Makeup Revolution palettes, so I'm not like dissing them for that. I honestly like the color scheme, although it is kind of weird that both of them have those four sort of like, they almost look like blush shades on the far right. I don't know, to me, I would sort of interpret this as like a blush, maybe even a highlighting and eyeshadow palette, like all in one. Because it kind of looks like you have your 6 eyeshadow shades and then you have your blush, like face blush colors that sort of go with those tones. Regardless, they're pretty palettes. Like, it's definitely something that I would have been drawn to had I not seen everything else that went with this, like the purse element. I'm sure these are super expensive, so the price element. I find it really weird when high-end brands go into makeup and it just seems like they don't know what they're doing. It's just a very weird choice. I probably would have maybe considered buying it if I didn't like see what it was, and now that I see what it is, yeah, not a fan. I also have no idea the quality of pigmentation. Because it looks so cheap and gimmicky, I don't imagine the quality to be that great, but I could be wrong. I actually do like the color stories, so good for them for having some creativity and adding some color, but it's kind of a weird product. Those are all my thoughts on the relatively recent releases in the makeup world. I'm sorry it's so long, but if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of my thoughts. If you agree, if you disagree, I'd love to have a conversation. I just love discussing makeup, so I'd love to hear your thoughts about these products. Follow me on my socials if you haven't already. I've got links in the description box for all of my other social media accounts, so you can check those out, follow me there. That would be really, really appreciated. If you enjoyed this content and want to see more content from me, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you'll get updated whenever I post a new video. And I'll see you guys next time.